Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I am still in Colorado, and I am joined by my lovely colleague today, Max, and we are going to talk about what Electrify America is up to lately. And if you haven't heard about it, just today, actually, we're filming this on July 8th, we saw this tweet from them. So it says, to reduce queuing and improve customer throughput, we will be conducting a congestion reduction pilot at select Electrify America stations, enforcing a state of charge limit of 85%. Learn more about our pilot program here. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into the details of this pilot program, the locations, what it means to cut people off at 85%, and what the goals might be here. So let's plug in for the details. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. So, Max, obviously we do have a stake in this. We charge at Electrify America, although I charged at EVgo this morning. But on my road trip, it was mostly Electrify America from Tennessee to Colorado. So it would have been interesting. I never needed more than 85%, but it would have been interesting to see a congestion reduction pilot happening at one of the stations I was at. Have you ever been to one that's quite like that?
No, I guess this is news, right?
Yeah.
So I've never seen this happen. They've announced it. Watch out, all of you ID4 owners or whomever on those free charging plans charging to 100%.
Exactly. So if you go to their page about this, you can read about the congestion reduction pilot. So what they have saying is that at Electrify America, we're committed to delivering a positive charging experience for every driver. As we explore strategies to reduce wait times and increase throughput across our network, we've launched a pilot that enforces a state of charge limit at select locations in California, Southern California, by the way. Spoiler alert. Once a vehicle reaches 85% state of charge, the charging session will automatically end and drivers will have 10 minutes to vacate their vehicle before idling fees are incurred. So now not only are idle fees real, but at 85% at these 10 locations, you got to get out of there. It says that they are inspired by customers' feedback and that it will be conducted across the stations that we will go over later, like I said, all in California, and that their team will continuously monitor station performance and customer sentiment during this pilot program and adjust as needed.
Wow, lots of news. Let's dig in.
All right, everyone. I'm now joined by Max. Thanks for joining me, Max, IRL, in real life.
In Colorado.
In Colorado, to talk about what Electrify America is doing and if we think it's a good idea or if it's the exactly right idea implemented in the right way. Because I know that we have some thoughts about like idle fees, congestion fees, how we can get sites running more effectively so folks can get the charge that they need. But yeah, so I gave you all the debrief on really what Electrify America has done. Now let's talk about it with Max. So as they say, this is to reduce queuing and improve customer throughput. So more people can get charging. That makes sense. When you first saw this, what did you think? It's not really like Electrify America has been talking about putting something like this in place, have they?
No, I actually was kind of impressed. I'm like, this is in some ways a proactive move. And I quickly saw on X, Twitter, whatever we want to call it, lots of people had opinions on this. And I can see right away, right, there are folks who will want to charge their EVs past that, either on a regular basis, which most people shouldn't, or for the occasional long trip. The thing that kind of flashed out to me was why 85%? So this isn't without precedent. We've actually seen Tesla at superchargers limit charging at busy locations, just like Electrify America is proposing in this pilot, to 80%. But Tesla would do that on a time basis. Some locations were 24 hours, some locations were only during peak hours, and they always had an override. If your Tesla in its trip planner had a multi-stop route and that charging stop was, on your way to another supercharger and not your endpoint, you could go past 80%. That's a very well considered move by Tesla. I think that's been in place since like 2019. And that's just the kind of thing they can do with vertical integration. Electrify America can't. So right away, Francie, my concern is like, well, what if you need to charge past 85% at one of those places?
Exactly. That's kind of what also I saw the comments on X being is like, okay, this seems pretty good for my point of view with the EV that I drive, but someone noted like, what about the Bolt drivers that need 85% or higher to get where they're going.
Yeah, hot take. It's not even the bolts that are the issue, because bolts, modern bolts, which should all have a new battery, or almost all of them should, with 66 kilowatt hours, they can get 260 miles of range. That's workable. I will just say, selfishly, like in my Polestar, that on a good day with stock tires, no roof bars, no cargo box, no bikes, will get 210 miles on the highway. So, and I think your VinFast might be similar, Francie, right?
Yeah,
Let's say we start adding mountain bikes. We throw a roof box on there. It's cold. Now I'm getting like 140, maybe 150 miles with all those range penalties. Absolute like worst case scenario. Or Rocky Mountains, maybe even less. Now, that's not a problem if there's chargers along the route. And I will say, Electrify America has lots of chargers. The issue is, what if some of those chargers don't work, or one of the stations is unreliable, you'd like to skip one? Well, now you don't have that option.
I think you bring up a good point with what Tesla is able to do, which is understand the driver's experience and their needs. But at this point, Electrify America doesn't know if you're on a road trip. They don't know what you need. But I also get the idea that 85% generally should be enough to get someone on their way. I mean, I don't think generally I've really needed more than 85%.
And let's just recap. I think everyone, hopefully listening to this podcast, may know, but just for those of you who may not, right? Most EVs, you don't want to charge past not just 85%, 80%, some EVs, 60, 70%, they'll start slowing down their charge a lot. So the way we've always road tripped at a Spec is, in most EVs, we will tend to arrive very low, sometimes 2 or 1%. Most normal people probably don't, but let's say 10%, and then charge to only what you need for the next stop, maybe with a little bit of extra buffer just in case.
Yes, I'm interested to see what everyone thinks. We also talked to our other teammates, and Mr. Dave Connor from Out of Spec Dave did write in. So I wanted to read what he said and see what you think. So this EV charging limitation constraint kind of reminds me of a time when we had open OPEC constraints on oil production, and you could only buy gas on odd or even days based on your license plate number. I don't think I was alive for that. All right, well, at least I didn't have my license. Or could only buy $10 worth of fuel back in the 70s. There you go. That worked out great. The only way to get more fuel than you deserved was to bribe the gas station attendant. Oh, Mr. Dave. Now you need to find F-150 Lightning owners to top charge your Bolt. I believe there will be an app for that coming soon. Okay, so it does seem like, we've had these kind of incentives, disincentives for resources that people need all throughout history.
Yeah.
Is this the way that we should implement it? Now, they're not doing this at all sites. So that's important. Like, this is a pilot. Also, did they choose the right pilot sites? I think that people have input on that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first off, great comment from Dave there. Yeah, neither of us were alive in the 1970s for the oil crisis then. So, love that historical perspective. Genuinely, really neat to have. I don't know if I see this as a parallel. Again, keeping in mind, neither of us were alive during then, because it's, like you said, only at a very limited number of sites. At the moment, it's a pilot program. So I think they've selected 2-3 sites in Southern California that they have selected as ideal sites for this. Now, that's open to change over time, and my hope is it does change over time. I don't live in California. I don't know these sites, but I know some of our listeners on X are like, these are the wrong ones, y'all, because these ones don't get that busy.
And before I go into the sites, there are more than 3. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
okay, 10. So pretty large
10,
pilot.
and we'll show you the map. But Dave's comment also had me thinking of, okay, but that was a shortage of a resource, actually, like the fuel, right? We don't necessarily have a shortage of electricity.
Shortage of time.
Shortage of time, exactly. Yeah, and maybe the shortage of ports.
Yes, and at these stations, that's a painful thing. I just want to reiterate again, it is so confusing to novice EV drivers that these Electrify America cabinets, one, they have way too few of them. We all know that, right? There's 4 in a good day if they're all working at many of these sites. I know they have some larger ones, but most of them have 4. And of course, one of them may be down or a cable doesn't work. So there's really 3 usable ones. You can easily see how during peak rush hour traffic, those can get congested. And then the other compounding issue is the cabinet design. Unlike EVgo or Tesla superchargers or almost anyone else, they seem to have 2 cables for redundancy at every one. Most of the time, both of them are CCS. Sometimes they have CCS and CHAdeMO, though I know they're phasing that out. But 2 cables. So to an average person, you'd think, one should be able to charge 2 cars. But you can't. So those are just for redundancy. Each dispenser can only charge 1 car. So basically, yeah, you're right, Francie. It's a limitation on not just the time, but the resource of just available dispensers. There's
Mhm.
plenty of electricity. Now, does Electrify America want to pay demand pricing for it? Probably not. They're probably not making a lot of money on selling it, but there's plenty of it to go around.
Mhm.
Contrary to what some folks might say about EVs right
Mhm.
now, not that many Americans drive EVs, but yeah, these dispensers are so far and few between, and they're just not distributed very well. Like we need to see what Tesla does, where they have 16, like 20
Yeah.
stalls at a site.
Yeah, it's definitely different when I pull up to an EA station with 4 stalls, and one of them is Chatamo, and then look over and there's empty 20 Tesla stalls.
Yeah.
It's just very, very different. And this does make me think as well. I've heard of things about utilities starting to derate chargers,
Mhm.
and it just makes me think into the future. What are the implications here? Electrify America will learn a lot from this pilot program, but also there are other ways that when pressure goes on the grid, or that if we need better throughput at sites, these entities, whether it's the charge point operator or the utilities, are going to start manipulating things, incentivizing, de-incentivizing, and we're going to continue to cover that. But I did talk about how there are more sites than let's show those all those sites. So I mapped them out on Google Maps. You can see all of them. It's technically the directions if you wanted to go between all of them. I didn't just drop the pins, but there are crud, there are a lot. I just moved one on accident, but there are a lot, and they're all. If you look at it though, it's all in California. It's Southern California, so all across the U.S. you're not going to be affected. It's only in California, which
For
makes
now.
sense for now. Yes, the pilot program. What do you
Yeah.
think that they're going to learn from this?
I don't know, to be honest, because I think it is generally speaking with ignorance of the area, the right area. There's a lot of EV drivers there. I can see
Mhm.
how it gets busy. We've all heard the stories of not just LA traffic, but San Diego traffic in that larger region. So I've seen it. I remember the coast to coast truck race. I realized how ignorant I was to the reality many EV drivers face when we arrived at San Diego at 2 a.m. and it's time to charge these bad boys. So we take them to an EV go station, and I'm thinking, this is like Denver. I'll show up. There'll be no one at the station. No, it was full. There was a line, and there's rideshare Uber drivers charging their EVs, many of which are the Kia Niro, Chevy Bolts, not the quickest charging EVs. And the stations were power limited to like 50, 35 kilowatts, not good speeds. So that's the reality for a lot of folks. So I'm hoping Electrify America learns from this program ways they can optimize things on their end. This isn't ideal when things hit the consumer. That's usually a means of last resort, but it can incentivize good behavior. It's true, most EVs should not charge past 85% most of the time.
Mhm.
However, having a hard limit is rough, but I understand Electrify America's perspective here. They don't have the luxury of Tesla of knowing, the navigation data from someone's car computer. Things aren't that vertically integrated. They barely know, at their stations if a cable's been cut. They don't
Yeah.
because they don't have that intelligence. They're not putting in, all this kind of awareness. And even if their stations theoretically are connected and on the grid, you still have to call them to reset the station. So I think their back end needs a lot of work. Then that would help alleviate the congestion before taking measures like this. But maybe right now, this is the best measure they can take
Mhm.
for the current moment. I will say, though, their next generation hardware, and I hope whatever backend software they're running is a lot more sophisticated than what we have now because we really needed it.
Mhm. I mean, it does seem like this is a bit of a reaction, well, to one, learning how to really properly, most effectively run these sites, especially when the resource isn't abundant. And also when people do like to sit until 100%, which is due to different incentives of usually free charging
Yeah, we
sometimes.
got to talk. That's the elephant in the room, right? These free charging plans. Someone
Mhm.
gets an ID4
They
or
get
another
free
vehicle, and
charging.
it used to be you get 2 or 3 years of unlimited free charging, and you
Mhm.
can see right away how that would be ripe for abuse.
Oh, yeah.
But our good friend Colton at Spec Detailing mentioned on their leased Volkswagen ID4, which I think is a 2023 model, they get 1,000 kilowatt hours of free charging, which seems more reasonable. That's like 12 full charges of
That's
them.
on his EV6.
Oh, sorry, on his EV6.
Yes, but on the ID4, they got 3 years.
Oh, so there we go. Contrast, case in
Yes.
point there. 1,000
Mhm.
kilowatt hours to me seems more reasonable because that's plenty of time for someone to get to know the
Mhm.
station while they're waiting for their home charging to be set up. They can rely on that for
Mhm.
several weeks. That seems reasonable to me. 2 to 3 years of free charging, while seemingly generous, has encouraged, and we've seen this, I think, firsthand, Francie, people to, for seemingly no reason, right? Because, these people presumably have jobs that pay them an hourly rate. They could be working, but no, they are at, my hot take here, they are at sites taking up their valuable time to charge not just to 80, not just the 90, but do 100% to get the most of their free charging plan.
Yes.
In the meantime, potentially causing congestion for other people who do need to use those chargers. And we've literally, like Kyle has talked to people at the Loveland station. There was this old couple, nice enough folks, but they were charging their ID4 to 100%. And they go there every day, and they happily told them this, that they have a level 2 charger at home in their garage, but because it's free, they want to take advantage of the charging plan and go to the station and charge to 100%.
Not really the move.
And they're retired, so they had time. But
yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's also a lack of information. So it's interesting that instead of maybe starting with a super great foundation of information and education for people taking EVs into their life, we are retroactively trying to shape behavior into a way that we want it to be. Definitely probably a case study in the future. I think we're still in the middle of the case study and seeing what's going to happen. But we'll see what works, like how this works. This is a pilot program. They'll see how it works. We've seen Tesla integrate it in a different way. There's idle fees sometimes for ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America. You will get charged an idle fee after 10 minutes if you leave your car at these pilot stations after reaching 85%.
Funny story on that too. I want to mention, Jordan and I noticed the other day, idle fees are actually starting to be implemented. For the longest time, at least on Electrify America's end, I'm not sure about ChargePoint and EVgo. I think they were more on top of this, but Electrify America had idle fees in their app all the time.
It was a threat.
But it was a threat that hung around in the air, but it was always at $0 a minute. And my speculation on this, my hot take, was their back end was not sophisticated enough that they honestly don't even know how long people are at these stations for. I have, with my Polestar and the Electrify America app, seen it think that I'm still at the station hours after I've left. So I can understand that were they to, when they weren't ready, enforce that, they could have a lot of angry customer support calls. But long story short, we saw this Audi e-tron at our, I believe somewhere, Colorado Mills Mall, I think, Electrify America. Someone was at 100%. They, charged up 45 minutes from whatever they came in at to full. And then their car was there for 2 hours past that, but they were being charged idle fees. So they had a $50 just in idle fees for having the car sit in that station and counting. I assume they went into a movie. I hope they were okay, but they went into a movie thinking things would be fine, and they probably came back to their car to a nasty surprise.
I didn't even think about how they might have experienced no actual consequences from idle fees.
So they had no idea that suddenly this was implemented. I guess, this seems to me the last few weeks, last few days, very recently. I'm glad they've implemented it. Most of our audience on X, of course, our fellow EV nerds are all for this, but this can bite some folks if they're not used to it.
Definitely, it does seem like they're implementing more of this. I think we do want to see a more cohesive behavior at charging stations. Generally, what I see, pretty good. People get out of there, and I get out of there too once I hit 80 if I'm really going that far. But other ideas, would love to know what y'all think are other ideas of ways to shape this behavior to encourage folks to, get out of there and not charge 100%. A lot of people I know do not know that, even people who have been driving EV for years, that you shouldn't charge your car up to 100% or 80, or just leave it lower and lower and lower if you can. But yeah, I had one idea that maybe they should charge double for the kilowatt hour rate over 80%.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what y'all think. But again, sometimes people do need a full charge. So if with no way to override that, if you're in a rental car, if you have to return it, if you're on a road trip, if you're towing, there are these things to consider. So yeah, I don't know.
Electrify America does, like Tesla and like EVgo, I believe, have a monthly subscription. So, kind of like Dave was hinting at with OPEC and this whole issue, right? If there's a scarcity issue with time or stations, whatever it might be, why not? Let's say someone gets an EA Premium subscription. I pay $8 a month for Electrify America's discounted pricing. In addition to discounted kilowatt hour pricing, let's say I get 3 credits to override a month with my premium membership. Well, then, sure, if I need to charge 100%, I can override it, but only a limited amount of times. That wouldn't roll over. So hopefully people would learn to be a little more disciplined with that. Maybe that's an idea too. I like your idea too of, pricing that's higher past 80%. But if it's double, well, what if it's a free charging plan? How do they do that? There's a lot of like billing kind of
That's so
things
true.
that I guess that's their job to figure out.
It is their job to figure it out. It's also their job to figure out why stations are being derated, how to quickly repair stations. That doesn't go, that goes unsaid a little bit because, obviously that should be their priority. But it's interesting to see them.
And it's been getting
prioritize
better,
this.
though, I would say.
Oh, it totally
We
has.
still see issues all the time, and the fundamentals light design is so flawed with only having 4 cabinets. But given what they have to work with, I have seen the network improve with reliability. We just did our road trip to Vegas and our race back, and none of the teams actually encountered, well, almost none of the teams really encountered that many issues with chargers that were completely non-functional.
Good.
There were some on our route that were marked as unavailable, but the app was accurate in most cases about that. And usually the charger actually wasn't the limiting factor. We had other limiting factors. It was hot. The car's thermal systems were stressed, but the charging infrastructure was actually mostly okay given what it is.
My 1,000-mile road trip out from Tennessee to Colorado, no issues at chargers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, love to see it. It definitely has changed in a short amount of time with definitely lighting the fire under charge point operators. In terms of social media, I think it's pretty, you can do a lot with a lot of people being angry about stations being down. But when we're referring to critical infrastructure and this critical resource that lets people get from point A to point B, which is not always just a fun road trip, it's very important that you should be able to get to where you want to go, especially when our public transportation is not exactly what it should be. It's not exactly is what it should be. I think that this is a good approach, and we've seen different approaches before, but I do wonder, is it 85% and we cut it off, or is it charge them a bunch until 100? I think there's different ways to implement this, and it'll be interesting to see what Electrify America takes from this, what people experience at these sites, and what y'all think would be a good technique. Anything else to add, Max?
No, I think you covered it really well, but I'd love to hear what other people have to say.
Yeah, let us know. This is a good discussion one because I think we all have a bit of a stake in this one. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Spec podcast. Thank you, Max, for joining me. Rafiki's over here on the floor sitting below the camera, being a great cameraman as well. So everyone have a great rest of your day. Drive safe. Stay charged. Bye-bye.